I never imagined a single dad could save his company's 65M, but what the CEO did next brought tears. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It felt like the sky was falling above me, all heavy and dark. A phone call shattered my world, the kind that makes your heart sink and your breath hitch in your throat. Your father has been in an accident, they said. Those words hit me like a wrecking ball. I barely processed the elastic band of hope stretching in my chest until it snapped that I remember racing to the hospital. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, sweat beading on my forehead. The fluorescent lights flickered in the hallway as I rushed past the nurses, who wore faces that told me they had seen too much pain that day. Each step felt like a mile. My little girl, Lily, was with me, clinging to my hand like a lifeline. Her innocent blue eyes were wide with confusion. "Is Grandpa going to be okay?" she asked, her voice small in the vastness of our despair. Why Dad was more than just a Monty saw reflections of strength, sacrifice, and love in him. He worked tirelessly to build our family's business, a legacy he passed down to me. Now here I was, torn between devastation and the jagged pressure of running a company on the brink of collapse. My thoughts spiraled into a fog of fear and responsibility. How will we make it through this? How could I lead when my own world felt so fragile? The doctor tried to explain, but I couldn't hear. Just the steady beep of a heart monitor haunted me, a metronome counting down my dad's struggle. It all felt surreal. Outside, the sky mirrored my turmoil, dark clouds swirling ominously. Life, it seemed, was a cruel game, and I was losing. Then came the news the company was facing bankruptcy. My heart sank lower, and I could feel the weight of it crushing my chest. The stakes were high. I had a family to support, and if I failed, it wasn't just the business that would crumble. It was our entire livelihood. In that intense moment, my phone buzzed insistently in my pocket, pulling me from my thoughts. An email. "You need to make drastic cuts," it read coldly. Tears prickled at the corners of my eyes, and I fought them back. My hands trembled as I deleted it in haste that I looked at Lily. She didn't know the storm swirling around us. She needed her dad to be strong. But in that moment, I felt so small, so helpless. How could I protect her? I glanced at the images on the wall there. Smiling faces anchored me in reality. My heart broke at the thought of losing everything. Then, as I stared into the abyss of uncertainty, something shifted. A whisper of hope. A plan started to form, and it ignited a faint spark behind my ribs. Could I really navigate this storm? I could feel it, a wave of determination rising inside me. But just as quickly, reality slammed back into focus. What if I failed? What if my efforts were for nothing? What if after everything, I couldn't save the company, or worse, couldn't save my family from the fallout? In that hospital room, my gaze drifted back to the heart monitor, steady yet fragile. My father was fighting for his life, and I was about to fight for ours. But could I face down the darkness? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The days dragged on like the slow drip of four fluids, each second marked by the echo of sterile equipment and muted discussions. My father remained unconscious, a precious moment clinging to the edge of life that I desperately wished to pull back. I spent every waking hour at the hospital, sitting in that uncomfortable chair, tears pooling in my eyes as I held Lily's tiny hand. She colorfully doodled on napkins, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in the corners of my mind. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow through the window, the doctor entered with a careful smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Your father is stable," he said gently, "but it will be a long road ahead." My heart fluttered with relief, but the weight in my chest remained. Stable didn't mean out of danger. What if we couldn't hold on long enough? Feeling overwhelmed, I stepped outside for a breath of fresh air, grateful for the quiet moment to gather my thoughts. But even the fresh air felt heavy with unspoken dread. A small group of my father's former employees stood near the entrance, their whispers slicing through my thoughts. They were speaking about the company, about how it had been the lifeblood of our community. Each word hung in the air, a reminder of the weight back on my shoulders. "Did you hear?" One of them said, voice ringing with disbelief. "If he doesn't recover, there's no way the company can stay afloat. ITLL have to be sold, and everything he built will vanish." I clenched my fists, the flames of anger mixing with my growing despair. They didn't know what my dad had sacrificed for that business. They didn't know him. My knees felt weak, and I leaned against the wall. It was like they were hammering nails into a coffin that wasn't even closed yet. I took a deep breath and left the group, returning to the sterile white of the hospital room. Lily was silent now, her head resting against my shoulder. The peacefulness of her rest tugged at something deep within Maya. Determination ignited. Once my father woke, I would discuss a plan with him. He wouldn't lose his fight or his company. Just then, I caught sight of a nurse, Emily, preparing to check my father's vitals. Despite her serious demeanor, there was an unmistakable kindness in her eyes. As she moved quietly about the room, I felt a warmth seep into the cold shadows of my heart. "Mr. Caldwell," she addressed me softly, knowing how difficult things were. "I know this is hard, but your father is a strong man, the kind who won't give up easily." I nodded, grateful for her words, but then the doubt crept back in. What if he needs to let go? What if don't speak like that? She interrupted gently but firmly. "You need to believe. It's essential for him, for your family. Your father needs you to be the pillar right now." Her simple kindness was a balm to my despair, and I was reminded that sometimes hope comes in unexpected packages. But the shadows lingered. My mobile buzzed again, shattering my moment of calm. Another email from the board urgent, demanding a plan for the future. The words blurred together. I felt crushed by their expectations as I put the phone away, the overwhelming anxiety pulsating in my veins that night. While I lay awake on the fold-out couch in the hospital room, I heard a soft gasp come from my father as he stirred. I sat up, heart racing, and leaned closer. His eyes fluttered open, revealing a fragile, unfocused gaze that brought the world rushing back. Fear, urgency, and hope all blended into a single cocktail of emotion. "Son," he whispered hoarsely, his voice barely rising above a crackle, "is Lily okay?" His concern for her radiated like warmth on a cold winter's night, and I could see the faint glow of his love still fighting to pierce through the fog of pain. "She's right here, Dad," I croaked out. "And she's worried about you. We both are." He smiled weakly. "You take care of the business," he insisted, his brow furrowing. "I built that for you. I can't keep it up if I don't say that." I interrupted, shaking my head, but before I could finish, he closed his eyes and drifted back into the uncertainty of unconsciousness, leaving me with words yet undone. As I sat there, staring at the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest, darkness wrapped around me again. I was at a crossroads, the weight of my father's hopes and the future of our family on my shoulders. I had to face the board, defend our legacy, and somehow convince them not to sell everything he worked for. But as I moved to call for help, a muffled rustle came from the corner of the room. I turned, eyes wide, heart thumping, and saw an unexpected figure lingering in the shadows. A silhouette of a man I recognized all too well, a face from the past, a reminder of past betrayals and a potential harbinger of chaos. With a jolt, I realized that the battle was deeper than I had imagined. This was not merely about saving the company or my father's legacy. The true conflict was about to come crashing down, and refusing to face it could cost us everything. The air in the hospital room thickened, the shadows of the evening closing in around us as memories rushed back with the apparition of Nathan Hale. The once friend turned foe had entered our lives again, and I could scarcely breathe as his familiar face twisted into a tight-lipped grin, the kind that did little to mask his intentions. "I didn't think I'd find you here," Mark, he said, his voice low and serpentine. Seems your father is hanging on by a thread. Quite the predicament, isn't it? What do you want, Nathan? I bit back, fighting the urge to recoil from his presence. The warmth of Emily's kindness faded in the wake of his chilling aura, and I could feel the weight of impending dread claw at my chest. Oh, just came to check on your father's progress, of course. He stepped further into the light, his eyes flicking toward my father, unconscious in his bed, a man who had trusted Nathan like family. But we both know that if things don't turn around soon, the company will inevitably go up for sale, and then who knows what might happen. You always did have a knack for turning a situation into a personal game. I shot back, anger igniting inside me. You're relishing this, aren't you? The thought of everything crumbling around us? Nathan leaned against the wall, casual yet predatory. I'm merely pointing out the reality of our situation, Mark. I haven't forgotten what your father did for me or how he kicked me out when I was asking for a fair share. His tone dripped with resentment. Perhaps it's just poetic justice that you're left carrying the weight he so easily cast aside. Just then, the beeping machines amplified our tension, and I felt a surge of protectiveness toward my father. He was right to let you go. You were a danger then, and you're a danger now. Stay away from us. He chuckled softly, a sound devoid of warmth. You should consider the offer I'm about to lay out. We could work together, find a way out of this mess. I have connections. Money. I can help you save your father's legacy. A swell of revulsion cloaked me. Help or destroy? This was a game I refused to play, and yet I felt the ground shift beneath my feet as his words sank in. Could he really help? Or was this merely a twisted trap set to ensnare us? I suppose that depends entirely on how you choose to play your hand, Mark. He tilted his head, studying me like a pawn on a chessboard. Just then, Lily stirred from her sleep, rubbed her eyes, and instinctively reached for my hand. Even in her grogginess, the purity of her innocence stood in stark contrast to Nathan's scheming demeanor. Daddy? She asked sleepily, and her little voice struck me like a lifeline. I am right here, sweetheart, I said, squeezing her hand tightly. Everything's fine. Nathan's eyes flicked to her before returning to me, the corner of his mouth twitching upwards slightly in what looked like genuine admiration. The girl is a treasure, Mark. You do well to protect her future, no matter what. A tremor ran through me as I realized just how deeply entwined our fates had become. The path was laid before me, dark and twisted, lit only by the flickering light of my father's struggle. I couldn't let Nathan's words sift into my mind like quicksand. We are stronger than whatever schemes you concoct, Nathan, I said firmly, squeezing Lily's hand a bit tighter, seeking comfort in her presence. And I'll fight to ensure my father's legacy isn't tainted by greed or betrayal. Nathan gave a slow, deliberate nod, his expression shifting, almost intrigued. Very well, but mark my words, you will need allies in the upcoming storm, Mark. And sometimes, the quickest way to secure your family's future is to work with those you least trust. Without another word, he turned to leave, stepping into the heavy silence of the hallway outside, leaving behind a swirling mix of uncertainty and fear. My heart raced, a blend of protectiveness and anger coursing through me. I knelt beside Lily, brushing a stray hair from her face. Everything will be okay, honey, I whispered, though I felt the storm brewing, dark clouds on the horizon I couldn't yet see but felt with every fiber of my being. In the stillness that followed, I couldn't shake the weight of Nathan's ultimatum, the truth of his twisted loyalty hanging over me like a specter. Will I be forced to weigh my values against the needs of my family, to consider playing a game I fully despised? A soft knock on the door interrupted my spiraling thoughts as Emily entered the room again, her eyes searching mine. You look like you saw a ghost, she said lightly. Everything okay? Just something unexpected came up, I admitted, hesitant to share the burden of Nathan's presence with her. Every moment felt fragile, like glass teetering on the edge of a precipice. I caught her gaze. She offered an encouraging smile, an unspoken promise of hope. Your father needs you now more than ever. You're doing great. Thank you, I murmured, holding on to her words like a lifeline amid the chaos. But as I glanced back at my father, the machines around him humming steadily, it was then I felt the weight of Nathan's final words resonate deeper. The fight was only just beginning, and I would need every bit of strength and perhaps every unlikely Alido keep our world from crumbling. As the night pressed on, sleep came uneasily. Uncertainty danced through my mind, gnawing at my resolve. I would have to face Nathan again. But for now, I just wanted a moment of peace to cradle my family, in silency a brief respite before the storm ahead. In my heart, I knew darkness was approaching, and it carried the power to shift everything I held dear. The early morning light filtered through the hospital window, casting pale shadows that flickered across the walls. I was bone-tired, each minute stretching into hours as I sat in the chair by my father's bed, the weight of his condition pressing down on me. Emily had returned to check on Lily, leaving me alone with the sterile hum of machines and the palpable fear that clawed at my chest. My father lay there, a weak silhouette of the strong man he once was, and I felt helpless watching the life ebbing from him. Why thoughts drifted back to Nathan, his serpentine grin haunting my mind like a ghost. I didn't want to think about him, but the dread clung to me. What if he held the power to alter our fate? Anxiety mixed with an underlying desperation, pulling me deeper into a pit of uncertainty. What would happen to my father's legacy, to my family, if Nathan's threats became a reality? With a heavy sigh, I leaned back in my chair, willing the shadows in the room to dissipate. That's when I heard Ida's soft knock on the door. My heart quickened as I turned, but it wasn't Nathan. Instead, it was a nurse, her demeanor calm and reassuring. "Good morning, Mark," she greeted, a warm smile breaking through the tension. "I just wanted to update you on your father's condition. His vital signs have stabilized overnight, and we're pleased with the progress. The doctors are hopeful. Hope, that elusive concept that sometimes felt infinitely out of reach." I let out a breath. I hadn't realized I was holding a flicker of light piercing through the gloom that had kept me company for far too long. "Thank you. I really appreciate it," I managed to reply, my voice cracking slightly that "I know this is a hard time." She continued, her eyes scanning the room. "But your presence here is incredibly important for him. Just being near him, holding his hand, it makes a difference." Her words wrapped around me like a comforting blanket. I realized in that moment how crucial it was to focus on the small victories, however fleeting. With a slight nod, I let her words settle in my mind like seeds of hope, taking root as I shifted my gaze back to my father's pale face. Later that day, after a quick sandwich from the cafeteria, I wandered back to my father's room, pockets full of his favorite snacks. I stored them in the small drawer beside his bed, the one ID, filled with mementos from better days. Photos of Lily's latest milestones and my father's proud smile filling the emptiness that surrounded us. Just then, Emily returned with Lily, bustling into the room like a ray of sunshine. "Daddy, guess what?" Lily chirped, her pigtails bouncing as she hopped over to my father's bedside. "I colored a picture for Grandpa. It's a rainbow." She held up the crumpled sheet of paper, her face bright with pride. "Can I see, honey?" I asked, my heart swelling at her innocent joy. Emily joined in, kneeling beside Lily, and they carefully unfolded the drawing that brimmed with color. "Wow, that's wonderful, sweetheart," I said, grinning despite the heavy heart that had settled within me. "Grandpa will love it," Lily declared, her exuberance filling the room, a lightness that felt infectious. I traded a glance with Emily, her smile mirroring my own, both of us momentarily anchored in this pocket of brightness amidst the dark uncertainty. Yet, as I watched Lily talk about her colorful masterpiece, the weight began to press down again. What if this was the last time we'd be able to share moments like this? A chill passed through me as Nathan's words echoed in my mind, something I couldn't shake off. Then, just as the tension started to creep back, the door swung open, and in marched an unexpected visitor. Sarah, my father's old business partner. She was a fiery spirit, someone I admired for her resilience and unwavering loyalty, and I hadn't seen her in ages. "Mark," she exclaimed, rushing forward to envelop me in a tight hug. "I'm so sorry to hear about your father. I came as soon as I could. How is he?" Her presence was a welcome balm, the familiar warmth of someone who understood the stakes. "He's holding on," I replied, motioning to the frail figure in the bed. "And he's fighting, but things are complicated. Life has a way of throwing complications our way," she said gently, her expression shifting to something more serious. "I heard about Nathan, and I'm here to talk strategies. Mark, we need to think ahead." I felt a tremor of fear and hope mixed within me, the prospect of her support igniting a fire deep inside. But even still, the thought of Nathan's looming threat hovered like a dark cloud. "This could get messy, Sarah. He's not going to play fair. That's why we need to be strategic," she replied. "I brought some ideas. I can help you navigate this." She glanced over at Lily, who was now engrossed in showing Emily her rainbow drawing. The innocence in her laughter seemed worlds away from the storm brewing on the horizon. "Is it okay for Lily to hear this?" I asked, treading cautiously. "Absolutely. She's part of this too. She deserves to know that we are all fighting for her future," Sarah said, determination glinting in her eyes. As we sat down, an unexpected surge of strength filled me. This was a flicker of hope I hadn't anticipated, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this fight. But just as I was beginning to feel optimistic, my phone buzzed, vibrating against the table beside me. I reached for it, and my heart froze as I processed the message that it was from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, an old acquaintance who once held a considerable influence within the community. The message hinted at a meeting with Nathan, a chance to discuss mutual interests regarding my father's company. A sick feeling coiled within me. The last thing I wanted to do was engage again with Nathan, yet the realization struck hard. If I wanted to protect my father's legacy, the very foundation of my family, I may have to gamble everything and tread deeper into Nathan's world. I felt the weight of the decision pull me under. Emily leaned closer, sensing my agitation. "Hey, what is it?" she whispered. Her presence was grounding as panic threatened to overtake me. "I have to face Nathan again," I confessed, letting the truth spill. Emily's eyes searched mine, steadily narrowing. "Mark, you're not alone in this, remember? You have us." Her words lingered, resonating with the warmth of our little group delight in the darkness that even Nathan couldn't extinguish. But uncertainty loomed over us like storm clouds obstructing the sun, and I was terrified of what lay ahead. Would I be able to play my part without being consumed by the darkness that Nathan represented? In that moment, I felt the swell of pressure, the tide pulling me into a battle I couldn't quite prepare for. I straightened my shoulders, clenching my jaw, a subtle resolve forming amidst the chaos. I wouldn't surrender without a fight, but something dark whispered that the cost might be greater than I ever imagined. The stakes just escalated, and I couldn't shake the gnawing dread that a decision had to be made, one that might alter everything, turning my determination into a double-edged sword. The hospital's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, merging with the quiet beeping of monitors as the hours slipped by, each one draped in a shroud of uncertainty. I was grateful for Sarah's company, but my mind remained tangled in threads of anxiety spun from Nathan's looming threats and the weight of my father's fragile state. The room felt like a battlefield, and I was acutely aware of the precariousness of our little corner of the world. That evening, as I settled back into the chair beside my father's bed, my hand resting in his, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that clung tightly to my chest. Despite Sarah's plans, the prospect of confronting Nathan filled me with foreboding. The man was unpredictable, and every interaction I had with him echoed with tension. What if this gamble, this desperate attempt to shield my father's legacy, turned everything to ash? Suddenly, the door creaked open, and a man I barely recognized stepped in. It was Nathan's shadow looming large, but it wasn't him, just someone who looked eerily like his assistant, a slick-haired, sharp-eyed fellow dressed in a tailored suit. The air shifted palpably, and my heart raced. "Mark," he said, his tone devoid of any warmth, "Nathan would like to arrange a meeting with you. It's important." Staring at him, I felt a surge of anger and fear. Important? You mean for him, not for me. Tell him I'm not interested. A thin smile crossed his lips, unsettling in its calmness. You know he rarely takes no for an answer. And if you value your father's company well, let's just say an opportunity exists for you to discuss matters that could be beneficial for all involved. I stood, my heart pounding, the need to protect my father's legacy overriding every other instinct. You tell Nathan I'll meet with him. I gritted, anger flaring within me, mixing with a sense of self-preservation. I needed to extract as much information as possible and prepare for whatever double dealings lay ahead. Yes, he turned to leave. A sudden thought crossed my mind. Was this a trap? Nathan was known for his cunning ways, and I couldn't ignore the possibility of being cornered. But deep down, I knew we were already backed into a corner. Losing my father, losing the company, losing everything was a fate worse than facing Nathan himself. Pushing those thoughts away, I focused on breathing, standing resolute as I waited for Nathan's question to surface in my mind. What would he want in return for his so-called help? My assumptions churned in dark circles, growing more ominous by the minute. Then came a soft voice at my side, cutting through the tension. Daddy? Are we going home after? Lily's hopeful eyes looked up at me, innocence wrapped tightly around her little heart. I knelt, forcing a smile despite the chaos in my chest. Not yet, sweetheart. Grandpa needs us here a little longer. But the rainbow, I want Grandpa to see it. She insisted, clutching the crumpled drawing like a shield against the shadows. An urge washed over me to promise her that everything would be okay, but doubt lingered like a storm cloud. You're right. He'll make sure he sees it. I promise, I said, desperation creeping into my voice as I choked on my words, the specter of uncertainty still looming over us. The door inched open again, revealing a nurse who wore a kindly smile, but my gut twisted. I could sense something changing in the air. Excuse me, Mark, she said gently, but we may need to give your father a little more time to rest. The doctors are concerned about his energy levels in this state. Each word felt like ice crashing upon my heart. I stood frozen, trapped between the weight of reality and the desperate hope I couldn't quite shake free. Can't we give him a moment? Just a moment longer? I pleaded, my voice strained. But she shook her head sadly, her commitment to my father's well-being rendering my desperation futile. I'm sorry. We want to ensure he fights to hold on. Just then, a tumult of voices echoed in the hallway, and I recognized those familiar tones. Emily and Sarah entered, bringing a sense of familiarity amid the clinical coldness. Say, Lily, how's that rainbow? Emily beamed, her enthusiasm radiating warmth. Lily immediately ran to show her, chatting animatedly, her innocence carving a pocket of joy from the pain swirling around us. With glimmers of hope still pulsating within the room, I caught Sarah's eye. We're meeting Nathan, I said quietly, the weight of what I had agreed to looming over me like a dark sea. Her brow furrowed. You sure that's wise, Mark? I can help you find a way to protect your father's legacy without playing his game. I don't have a choice, I replied, anxiety twisting again in my gut. But I need to know what he's planning. It's all on the line. As I stared out of the window, the last blush of sunlight waned beyond the horizon, engulfing the room in shadows. The night felt like an omen, one that suffocated hope. Yet amidst the gloom, I resolved not to let Nathan snuff out the very light Lily radiated. I wouldn't let him win. But as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, a cold message dinged in my pocket, an anonymous text, its words chilling. The clock is ticking, Mark. Choose wisely. The consequences are dire if you fail. My breath hitched. I glanced at Lily, joy still sparkling in her eyes, a small blessing in the chaos. But now, the stakes felt more profound. The clock was ticking. But for whom? With every heartbeat, the spiral of tension wound tighter as I wrestled with a forthcoming confrontation, knowing that no matter my words or intentions, with Nathan, every second brought us closer to a reckoning I might not be able to face. And yet, as I looked around the room, I grasped onto that flicker of hope. Somehow, I would protect my father or my family, and Lily whatever the cost. But, As I faced the shadows closing in, I couldn't shake the feeling that a reckoning was approaching, and this time it wouldn't just be about my father's legacy, but my own future as well. The air thickened in the dim light of the hospital room, weaving an invisible web of dread as I wrestled with the message now burning in my pocket. The cool metal tingled against my skin, an ever-present reminder of the urgency pressing down on me like a weight on my chest. My eyes lingered on Lily, her innocence a stark contrast to the reality I was facing. In the fading light, her laughter sparked memories that weighed heavily on my heart a time when life hadn't felt so perilous. "Mark, are you okay?" Sarah's voice, soft yet laced with concern, pulled me back into the moment. I forced a nod, even though anxiety churned within me. "It'll be fine." I hesitated, unsure of how to express the whirlwind inside me. "I just need to protect what matters." Emily watched us, her bright eyes flickering with understanding. "You'll figure it out, Mark. You always do." The belief in her voice sparked a tiny flame of reassurance. I wanted to grasp it, but the tendrils of Nathan's looming threat tightened around my resolve. Just as I opened my mouth to respond, a shadow darkened the doorway. My heart sank at the sight of Nathan's assistant reappearing's slick demeanor betraying the darkness, shadowing Nathan's intentions. "It's time," he said coolly, gesturing for me to follow. "Now?" My voice cracked, indignation boiling beneath the surface. I cast quick glances at Lily, still enthralled by Emily, blissfully unaware of the looming danger. "Yes, now," he replied, his tone leaving little room for negotiation. "Nathan doesn't appreciate being kept waiting." With every step I took away from the hospital room, I felt the connection to my father weaken, a shared heartbeat pulsing behind those closed doors. The sterile hallway stretched out ahead, each step echoing with the finality of choices being made. Before my breath could catch in my throat, we rounded another corner, and my pulse quickened at the sight of Nathan entering an office. The man was a fortress of intimidating presence. His eyes narrowed as he gestured for me to sit, an invitation masked with an unspoken threat. "Mark," Nathan began, his voice smooth like oil yet edged with a razor-sharp undertone. "I take it you understand the gravity of your current situation." I wanted to retort, to unleash all the pent-up frustration I felt toward him, but I knew this moment was about gathering intelligence, not raising defenses. "I do," I replied, steeling myself, "but I need to know what you want." His lips curled into a sly grin, as if he relished my directness. "Smart boy. I appreciate someone who skips past the pleasantries." He leaned forward, and I could feel the weight of his presence, a looming storm ready to explode. "Your father's company is in risk. Let's just say I've made some unofficial offers on its behalf." "Unofficial?" I echoed, disgust curling my lip. "What's your angle, Nathan? Gunning for control while he's incapacitated?" A flicker of amusement danced in his eyes, but the smile didn't reach them. "It's not personal, dear boy. Business is business. But you could leverage this moment for a deal of your own." My gut churned. I envisioned my father, eyes closed, unaware of the machinations swirling around him. "And what would I be trading for this deal of yours?" Nathan leaned back, tinting his fingers, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of the predator he truly was. "Your silence on past," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "injustices." A lump formed in my throat, the accusation unwelcome, yet hauntingly familiar. I heard whispers, seeing the toll his past actions took on innocent lives, but I had no intention of bargaining my conscience for my father's legacy. "I'm not interested in a deal built on deception." His laughter filled the room, echoing against the walls, and I felt every ounce of my resolve shake beneath its intensity. "You think you have a choice? You're outmatched, Mark. The vocal spotlight could either shine on your family's legacy or on its demise. Those are your choices." Panic flooded through me. What if he was right? What if my options were as limited as he suggested? "If you think I'll let you manipulate me, you're mistaken." I shot back, desperation fueling my voice, my heart racing. "We'll see about that," he replied, smirking, a predator unfazed by my defiance. "The clock is indeed ticking. You must decide your next move carefully." The moment stretched, fear coiling tightly around my chest as the reality of my father's situation loomed large. I stood, unwilling to show the weakness I felt and determined to defy Nathan's grip. "Leave my father out of this, Nathan," I managed to say, voice steady despite the tremor within. "Why would I do that?" He taunted. "He's the key to your future as much as you'll allow him to be." As I turned to leave the office, 1,000 thoughts collided in my brain. How could I protect my dad while defending our legacy? Outside, the world felt impossibly loud, filled with the hum of ordinary life, oblivious to the storm brewing between us. But just as I rounded the corner, a notification ping echoed eerily in my pocket again. Pulling out my phone, my heart sank at the new message. "Watch your back. Others are interested in your father's fortune. Be careful who you trust." The ground beneath me felt unstable as panic washed over me. Who else could possibly be vying for this? My thoughts raced back to Nathan, to duplicity lurking around every corner. I needed to find a way not just to save my father, but to salvage our family's future from the riptide of chaos threatening to pull us all under. But as I glanced back toward the hospital room, I caught the slightest flicker of movement in a nearby window, the reflection of a figure in a dark coat, watching, waiting. A chill swept over me, invading my determination with dread. New challenges loomed ahead, shadows intertwining with the fragile light of hope. Each decision could lead to salvation or despair. And as I returned to the room, ready to face the outcome, I realized this was far from over. How much had I truly risked by merely stepping into Nathan's arena? The air was thick with uncertainty as I stepped back in the hospital room, the cheerful beeping of the machines a jarring contrast to the turmoil inside me. Lily continued to occupy her corner, blissfully unaware, her giggles punctuating the tension like a beacon in the dark. Emily was still there, and her eyes met mine with equal parts concern and confusion. "Hey, what was that about?" she asked, her voice slicing through the atmosphere like a knife. I shook my head, tone wavering, "Just some business." The words felt heavy on my tongue, a lie tangled with the truth. Business didn't capture the very real weight of Nathan's threats or the fear churning in my gut. I was caught in a web, and the strands were tightening with every passing minute. "Your dad will pull through, right?" Emily pressed on. Reading the tension in my posture, I wanted to reassure her, to let her see that beneath the fear, there was a flicker of hope-y faith in my father's strength. "Of course," I replied, yet my heart wasn't convinced. I thought of his frail state, the vulnerability he had shown in that hospital bed, and the dose of fear gripping my heart. "He's a fighter." Yes, I leaned back against the cold wall, my mind spun back to Nathan's words. There was something sinister laced in his insinuations about a deal, especially when it concerned my father and the legacy we had fought so hard to maintain. "Mark?" Emily's voice was gentle, drawing me from my spiral of worry. "You look like you've seen a ghost. Can I help?" I wished it were that simple. The weight of secrets bore down on me, and no amount of comfort could shake the menace of Nathan's presence from my mind. But even as despair crept in, the spark of hope flickered thanks to their support. Lily's laughter, Emily's steadfast gaze. "Just keep an eye on Lily for me," I said quietly, not knowing how to articulate what I truly needed. "To need to make some calls." The tension was palpable as I stepped into the hall, drawn to the calmer space beyond the chaos of the hospital room. My mind raced, grappling with the message on my phone, the threat that loomed not just from Nathan, but from an unknown player whose intentions were shrouded in mystery. "Mark?" came Sarah's voice, pulling my thoughts from the fray. Her expression held an urgency that commanded my attention. "You need to see this." She waved her phone in front of me. Curiosity mixed with anxiety as I moved closer. "What is it?" She turned her screen towards me, and my heart sank again. A headline blared. "Mysterious buyer emerges for Crest Industries." The article outlined how investors had begun circling our family's company, moving in for the kill while my father was down. "Who are they?" I asked, my voice strained as the realization dawned upon me. "Who's behind this?" "The article doesn't say," she replied, concern lacing her voice. But it's clear they're not waiting for your father to recover. Anger flared within me, igniting a need to protect what was ours. I could feel the tendrils of dread tightening, but now there was a fire, a willingness to fight back. I can't let them take it away from him. Then we have to find out who they are. This isn't just about business. It's about your family, Sarah urged, her eyes filled with determination. Nodding, a plan began to form in my mind. I need to reach out to some contacts, see if anyone knows about the buyer's identity. As I hurried down the hall to make my calls, my thoughts tumbled over one another, each one louder than the last. Adrenaline coursed through me as I dialed a number, feeling a slight rush of control return. If I could gather some information, maybe I could seize back some power from this storm that threatened to engulf us. Then, just as I were about to connect with a familiar voice, an unexpected presence startled me. I turned sharply, and my heart stopped. The figure in the dark coat was there, but now they were stepping closer, revealing a pair of familiar, yet startling eyes behind the shadows. "Mark," they said softly, their voice threading through the chaos around me like a ghostly whisper. "I know what's happening with your father, and we need to talk." My breath hitched, a mix of recognition and fear spiraling through me. "What do you mean? Who are you?" With a measured pace, they stepped further into the light, and I felt the world around me tilt on its axis. The weight of their knowledge and the burden of their intentions pressed down on me heavily. "I'm here to help, but time is running out. You need to comprehend the breadth of their game before it's too late," they warned, locking eyes with me, a storm brewing within those depths. In that moment, with tension churning in the air, I understood that I stood on the precipice of a decision that could alter everything. Would I take a leap into the unknown and trust this enigmatic figure? Or would I steadfastly cling to the uncertainty of my current allies as the clock ticked menacingly towards an inevitable confrontation? As I stood there, heart racing, the world around me seemed to shrink, collapsing into the intensity of that moment. The figure before me was an unsettling mix of familiarity and distrust. I tried to peel back the layers of their face, searching for clues, yet I was only met with ambiguity. "Help," I echoed, frustration and hope battling within me. "You're asking me to trust you in a situation I can barely comprehend. I understand why you would hesitate," they replied, their voice steady, with a hint of warmth that felt almost protective. "But you have to trust that I have your family's best interests at heart. I care about your father, and I know how to counter Nathan's moves. Three simple words echoed in my mind. I care about your father. Instantly, the air thickened with unasked questions, reeking of stories I didn't yet know. "Who are you?" I pressed again, desperation rippling through my voice. "How do you know my father?" At that, their expression shifted, a flicker of something raw and genuine breaking through the veil of secrecy. "Because I used to work for him," they confessed, their eyes narrowing slightly as though weighing the significance of their revelation. "Before everything fell apart." Everything fell apart. I felt the words resonate with unspoken histories and shattered dreams. My father had always carried the weight of pride and resiliency, never spoke of the past or any potential failures. The riddle deepened, the stakes escalating in tandem with my confusion. "Yes, Mark, there's so much that you don't know," the figure implored, stepping closer as their voice took on a lilt of urgency. "Let's find somewhere private to discuss this. Here, you're vulnerable, and Nathan's influence runs deep." I hesitated, deliberating the weight of their proposition. To follow this stranger, to navigate into the labyrinth of their truths, could lead me away from the safety net Emily and Lily provided. The connection was frail, but comforting, yet an undeniable current tugged at my conscience, whispering that our time was limited. I began, but was interrupted by the distinct sound of a panicked gasp coming from the hospital room. Emily's voice, laced with alarm, sliced through the moment, crystallizing my priorities. I looked back toward the familiar space, my chest tightening as I recalled my father's fragile state. "Wait here," I said, adrenaline pushing me back towards the door. "I need to see if everything's all right." The figure nodded, and I dashed back down the sterile hallway, uncertainty mixing with dread as I approached the familiar space. The beeping machines and the muted voices of nurses filled the atmosphere. But Emila's face was a canvas of fear. "He's not responding," she murmured, her eyes wide with panic, the question hanging heavy in the air like a storm cloud. "Mark, I don't know what to do." My heart sank at her words, the stakes amplifying higher. "What do you mean?" I asked, urgency pressing into every syllable. "He was just fine, I swear. He was stable a moment ago," she stammered, her words rushing out in a flood of emotion. And now her voice faltered, breaking with the weight of impending despair. Panic gripped me, an icy tendril slithering around my heart. "Call the nurse," I barked, feeling the helplessness fester inside me. But there was no more time for fear. All I could think about was getting to my father. I pushed past the threshold, seeing him there, surrounded by medical staff, their frantic movements contrasting starkly with the stillness of his pale face. The beeping monitors sounded an alarming rhythm. Each noise clawed at my insides, igniting a burning urgency. "Step back," a nurse commanded, her voice firm but laced with a trembling hint of desperation. "Please, what's happening?" I implored, feeling the last threads of hope unravel. My father was a cornerstone of our family, a symbol of strength that I had believed would never waver. "Cardiac arrest. We're trying to stabilize him," another nurse replied, her tone brisk, but a flicker of compassion glimmered in her eyes. My mind raced, fear and helplessness mingling into a relentless wave. I wished for my father's eyes to flutter open, to return to me, to remind me of his unwavering conviction that we would fight through any storm. But just as the thought rooted itself in my mind, the figure I had left outside re-emerged at the doorway. Their expression was a churning storm of concern and determination, poised on the edge of resolve. "Mark," they called out, and I felt a spark of connection even amid the chaos. This was not simply about fighting to retain the legacy of Crest Industries. Anna Marie, it morphed into a battle to save the man whose tenacity molded everything I was. The storm inside me reached its zenith, demanding a choice, urging me to weigh the unknown against the familiar. That moment, the current of despair clashed with an unexpected ripple of hope. I needed clarity, needed to fight, not just for my father's legacy, but for him. An impulse surged through me. This fight wasn't over. It had merely transformed into something raw and immediate. And then, just as the tension seized the air, I caught a glimpse of that familiar dark coat in the corner of my eye. Their voice, piercing through the fog of shouts and alarms, called out with a sense of adamancy. "You need to trust me. We can save him." I felt the weight of an impending decision unfold before me, and just as I turned to scream for them to come help me, the lights flickered ominously above us. An unshakable sense of dread gripped my throat. What other hidden truths lay beneath the pragmatic surface of this crisis? In this moment of chaos, when every heartbeat stretched time and possibility, I realized that I stood not just at the edge of losing my father, but at the crossroads of an even larger storm that threatened everything I cared for. The air hung heavy with uncertainty and fear as I felt myself caught in the eye of the storm. Each frantic shout of medical personnel echoed in my ears like the tolling of a bell, calling not just for my father's life, but for my resolve as I stood at the precipice of an unthinkable crisis. "Mark, you need to make a decision now," the figure implored, their voice pulling me back from the edge of my spiraling thoughts. It wasn't just about the chaos in front of me. It was about a deeper truth I was yet to face. I snapped my gaze towards them, confusion muddling with an urge to act, to fight. "Where have you been?" I shouted back over the noise. "What do you mean we can save him?" "We have to confront Nathan," they replied urgently, taking a step closer, intent and unwavering. "Your father's stable now." "Yes, but you need to understand that Nathan is pulling strings behind the scenes. His hold on Crest Industries runs deeper than you realize. He intends to sabotage everything your father built, and time is running out." Every word pierced through the chaos, and I grappled with them. Dismissing the panic for just a moment, I felt the pull of conviction. Nathan wasn't just a rival. He was a destroyer of legacies, and for the first time, I was offered a glimpse of understanding cloaked in urgency. It felt all too clear that protecting my father's life was intertwined with protecting our family's future. "You want me to trust you?" I scoffed, but even I could hear the tremor in my voice. It was laced with both frustration and desperation, as if my very identity was thrust into this whirlwind. Yes, they insisted, unwavering. "Your father believes that everything is under control, that if we can just hold on a little longer, things will correct themselves." But they won't. I've seen what Nathan is capable of, and your father is in deeper than you all realize. The truth weighed heavy on my shoulders, and as I turned my gaze back to the medical team surrounding my father, their clinical expressions reminded me that time was slipping through my fingers like sand. I was living in a nightmare hovering in the shadow of dread as I watched my father fight for life beneath sterile lights. "Any moment wasted brings the darkness closer," the stranger continued, their eyes imploring, offering not just hope, but a lifeline in the form of agency. "We need to gather intel on Nathan, and we have to act fast." I felt the weight of their words thrum through me as the medical teams adjusted machines, voices rising and falling like an emotional tide around us. Clutching the edge of my father's bed, I looked down at his pale face, so vulnerable, so unlike the man who had always exuded strength. But then I felt a surge, not of confidence, but of undeniable urgency. I was no longer an unsure child wishing for paternal protection. I was a man facing choices that would shape the very course of our family legacy. And in that choice, there lay the possibility of saving more than just my father. All right, I finally breathed, the air punctured by the weight of a decision that felt both liberating and terrifying, as if I had taken a leap into an abyss with nothing to catch me. "We'll confront Nathan. But if we're doing this, I need your word that you know what you're doing." The figure nodded solemnly, a glimmer of gratitude shining through their deep-set eyes. "I promise you this. I will protect your family. We can do this together." I took a deep breath, swallowing hard against the unspeakable dread that clawed at me. "What do we need to do first?" "Find evidence, gather support," they replied, glancing toward my father's still form with a steely resolve. "We'll need allies who stand against Nathan, people your father trusted. If we can unite them, we can turn this tide back in our favor." With my heart racing, I could feel the delicate strands of hope intermingle with trepidation. A plan was forming, and with it, a pathway through the murkiness of uncertainty. But as I turned back toward the medical staff, wishing to gauge my father's progress, the lights overhead flickered ominously. Agina, premonition lurked in the air, heavy and foreboding. The surge of hope I had managed to muster suddenly felt fragile, and a shiver of anxiety traced along my spine. Just then, the door swung open with a harsh bang, and in walked Nathan himself, his presence like a dark cloud rolling over the horizon. My breath caught in my throat as he scanned the room, his gaze finally locking onto mine, a smirk curling his lips. Mark. "I see you've brought some company," he stated smoothly, dripping with disdainful amusement. "How very touching. But I fear it will be a wasted effort. You are just a pawn in a much larger game, and I am here to win." With those taunting words hovering in the air, I felt the fragile web of hope began to fray, revealing the vast chasm of battle ahead. As Nathan turned towards my father's bed, I knew that the stakes had never been higher. His arrival was not merely a coincidence, but a calculated ambush. And just like that, the swirling tempest of emotion that had been my anchor now felt like the darkness, creeping in against shadows, unfurling into the light with the threat of what was to come. I stood at a crossroads where allies could turn foes and trust would be a double-edged sword. In that turbulent moment, I sensed that this journey would test not only my resolve, but reveal truths I had yet to face, truths that might alter everything I loved and believed. The chaos of the hospital room condensed around me as Nathan's chilling presence seeped into the air like a fog, obscure and suffocating. My heart raced, the weight of uncertainty pressing down like a vice. "What are you doing here?" I spat, anger flaring in me. echoing the fear gnawing at my insides. Nathan's smirk widened, an unsettling curve that twisted his features into a mask of confidence. "I came to check on your dear father, of course," he replied, his gaze darting dismissively around the room before landing back on me. I could hardly ignore the collapse of a legacy, could I? Though it seems he continued, stepping closer, eyes glinting with a predatory hunger. "You appear to be embroiled in something interesting." With a knot forming in my throat, I fought against the instinct to retreat, standing my ground. "Get out," I said, my voice resonating cooler than I felt. Nathan raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise, but the mockery was palpable. He leaned closer, his words laced with venom. "You know, Mark, I've always admired your naivete. You think you can protect your father's legacy from me? From everything I know?" My breath felt shallow, the reality of his insinuation smothering me. But then I caught a glimpse of my father, so vulnerable in that hospital bed, still fighting, still present. "You don't have power over me," I said, a flicker of defiance igniting within me. Not while my father is still breathing. The tension in the room thickened, pulsating with unspoken challenges. Nathan regarded me closely, his smirk faltering for the briefest moment before reinvigorating. "You might be surprised by how quickly the tide can turn when emotions cloud judgment, Mark. After all, legends may rise and fall based on mere moments of weakness." His gaze drifted past me to my dad, feigning concern. "But I suppose it's too late for sentiment now." The air crackled as I processed his ultimatums. My father is not just a business. He's a man fighting for his life. And for my family, whatever you try to twist to your advantage, I said firmly, the gravity of my voice wrapping around my words like a protective cloak. In that brave moment, memories surged as I remembered his sturdy frame teaching me about resilience, about the value of standing tall against adversity, lessons I would carry forth now. I refused to let Nathan's darkness seep like poison into my resolve. Nice sentiment. Nathan's voice dripped with condescension, but beneath the facade, I sensed a sliver of unease. "But you don't realize the war that's at hand. While you play the hero, others are gearing up for a fight." The threat lingered in his tone, an invisible predator lurking beneath the surface. Just then, everything shifted. A soft gasp floated through the thick tension, crumbling the uncertainty that had hung tightly around us. It was Emily, standing by the doorway, eyes widened with horror as she caught onto the dangerous energy fueling the exchange. "Mark, don't listen to him," she called, her voice tremoring yet resolute, adding her strength against the storm gathering in front of me. "This isn't just a business deal. This is about your father, our family, and the people who count on you." Nathan's expression flickered momentarily, irritation ebbing into darkness. "And who exactly are you, my dear? A disgruntled nurse playing the mouthpiece for your boss?" He spat, the venom dripping from his words. Emily stood unwavering, her expression unyielding, defiance crackling between us like electricity. "I'm someone who sees the truth, that you're trying to destroy a legacy while it's vulnerable. How can you do this?" Her voice cut deeper than mine, resonating with complex emotions that echoed through those sterile white walls. The tension grew thicker, brewing like an impending storm, as Nathan stepped closer, his eyes narrowing in response, charm melting away. "You think your words carry weight? You're nothing in the grand scheme of things." With time slipping through our fingers, a surge of determination gripped me. I turned to Emily, meeting her clear gaze, and felt a bond of understanding light the air between us. We had a chance together. This was a shared journey, not one I had to traverse alone. "Leave us," I said, my voice rising amid the impending shadows. "We won't give in to your games, Nathan." All the air seemed to thrum with energy. The moment hung, suspended, as Nathan stared me down, measuring my resolve. But behind that bravado, I noticed the slightest flicker of wavering confidence, a crack in the facade of his carefully constructed walls. But before he could respond with a clever retort, a new voice stepped into the fray. "And what if we told you we had more than just threats? My heart skipped to the unexpected resonance, and I turned to see the figure of one who had warned me earlier emerging from the shadows behind Emily. Nathan's grin faltered, and a frisson of alarm flickered in his eyes. "Who are you?" he rasped, suspicion lacing his tone. "This is not just about you and your petty games, Nathan," the figure declared, stepping forward with every ounce of intensity. "This is about legacy, about what it means to truly fight for something worth preserving." My breath caught. There was something empowering about this encounter. As tensions rose, Nathan straightened, attempting to regain his composure. "Legacy?" he scoffed, though the mirth had faded. "Your legacy will be dust before long." But the strangers stepped back, the light of conviction in their eyes growing brighter than any shadow Nathan cast. "You underestimate the resilience of those who stand to protect what matters. And we will stand together." That I felt a swell of courage pool within me. Nathan's calculated malice felt less daunting now, diminished against the shared strength binding us. This wasn't just about my family anymore. It was about connections, commitments, and shared values pulling together against impending darkness. With that newfound resolve welling up inside, I looked at my family gathered around me, Emily, Lily's drawings still radiant with life on the table beside me, and the figure with echoes of the past pushing forward. Together, we're strong. Together, we can overcome your twisted designs, Nathan. My father has always embodied strength, and he taught me how to stand tall. No matter the odds, I stepped forward, defiance ringing clear in my voice, a beacon against Nathan's shadows. "So you listen well. It's time to put an end to your game. We're done being pawns." Nathan faltered, realizing that the tables had shifted, caught in a snare woven by our resolute spirit. "You think this is over?" he hissed, the fury in his voice growing. But even he couldn't seem to regain the control he coveted. The stranger placed a steady hand on my shoulder, grounding me. "We are the voice of the legacy your father fought to protect. And if you try to strike against it, we will unite all those who share this fight." A flicker of fear crossed Nathan's features, a fracture in his facade. I could almost hear the gears turning in his mind, sensing the tide beginning to shift. "They'll see you all soon," he spat before backing away, his retreat more calculated than Head wished to convey. "You've only delayed the inevitable." But as the door swung closed behind him, I exhibited relief mingled with adrenaline. This wasn't over not by a long shot, but in that exchange, our resolve had crystallized. "Mark," the figure said quietly, grounding the energy back to reality. "We need to move quickly. Rally those who believe in your father's vision. This is only the beginning of the battle. I didn't need to think twice." With every fiber of my being, I was ready for what lay ahead, ready to conquer the darkness wielded by Nathan. And as I turned to Lily, the light of hope mirrored in her eyes, I softly promised, "I will protect our future. Together, as a family, we will endure." In that moment, I finally felt the weight lift, transform from fear into fierce determination. Love anchored me, strength igniting like a flame, shimmering amidst the shadows around us. Together, we would weather the storm, transforming legacy into action and rising from adversity brighter than before. And just like that, standing united, I knew we'd emerge victorious. The battle called for courage, and we would answer together. As I held my daughter's little hand, her innocent smile ignited a mantra deep within my heart. We are stronger than the darkness that seeks to divide us. All I could think then, as calm washed over me amid the lingering chaos, was that love would always be our greatest weapon.